Hi, I'm Dan Schinder.
And I'm Steven Schinder.
We are Yesshift. Thank you for joining us. What do we do here? I don't remember. It feels like we haven't done this in a while.
Yeah, it feels like we haven't done this since last year.
Wait a minute. And we haven't.
Yeah, so, this is our first show of the year, and we're glad to finally be able to do this. And this is a topic that really got a lot of responses. Very pleased to see. And so the topic it was basically one of the questions from our purge, right? There's a bit more to it, which I'll get into later, I guess. But yeah, that night in the hotel when we just blurted out some episode ideas, and this was one of them. What's the biggest production shift between two consecutive Yes albums?
And I have to say, at the time, I thought, this is a good idea. I like this one. And who thought of it? Did you or did I think of it? I think I thought of it.
So I think you came up with the production part, but it was after I mentioned, a possible topic of which was the bigger shift overall, this album to this album or this album to that album. And I'm not sure if I should mention those albums now or if, I feel like I should save them until later because I feel like people have already mentioned them, so I'll wait until after all that, I guess. But,
we'll give our initial takes in a moment, and then we'll read the fan stuff that we've collected from posts. And folks, if you're watching live, it's not too late. Feel free to chime in. What two albums do you feel, consecutive Yes albums, have the biggest shift in production, one direction or the other? And when we thought of this, I thought, this is a good one. And the response, I don't think we've gotten more responses to any one topic before.
Yeah, well, maybe for one of the Roger Dean ones where people listed their favorite paintings.
Yes, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, but and I haven't told you this yet, but I've been tallying how many of these
are the same.
Yeah, so far I won't say what they are yet, but there is a top three. Even if I am one number off, there is a obvious top three among all these gaps between albums and which ones people think is the biggest production shift between them.
And there's I gotta tell you, there's a couple of things that I read in the comments that you compiled where I was like, wow, I didn't think of that one. I'll give my initial one, even though some of it's changed now a little bit, but mine is still very valid. And I think, I don't want to give it away, but I will say, I'm guessing, I haven't tallied. I think my initial one is one of the most popular ones, but I've seen a couple other mentioned that I went, whoa, I didn't even think of that. Because mine, I have thought for years and years and years. So it was easy. It was just top of mind. I didn't even give it any thought. Oh, I know what that is. And I think that's where the whole idea of the show came from, because I've always complained about the difference in these two albums, one album apart and only a year apart, So we'll get into that. But I want to thank everybody for chiming in. Tell us, folks, also where you're watching from. I'm in Globe, Arizona, which is a very small mountain city, about 100 miles east of Phoenix. There's 7,200 people here. And Steve's in SoCal. Can we say what city, or do you still have groupies after you? Oh, okay, he's in Downey.
Yeah, I'm in Downey, yeah. And these, again, really happy with the responses. And I think mine, my answer, I'm not, even after reading some of them, I'm not sure if I'm 100% with it. It could even change over time, but I think I'm gonna stick to my answer. It just because it's one of the least popular ones. I want to throw in my 2 cents on that.
Oh wow, that's funny. I was gonna ask you if your answer. And sorry, folks, I'm looking at my notes, and I rarely use notes, but for this, I gladly have to. And I'm just gonna move them. I'm on a really big screen. I'm gonna see if I can move them over to. Screw it. I'll just have to look to the side, and that's okay. Yeah, I was going to ask if your answer may have changed based on some things you saw people suggest, but let's just get into it and see. So I'll give you the honors. beauty before age in this case. So go ahead, son. And did we say that it's a father-son program?
Yeah, you're the father, I'm the son.
Yeah, sometimes that changes in some ways, but that's another story.
No, it doesn't. So my initial answer, and this is kind of, well, first off, we should talk about what do we mean when it comes like production wise, because I feel like people have different views of that.
You're right.
I'm thinking like the sound and how it's recorded.
Yeah, sonically, the result. That's a good point to bring up, Steve. Sonically, the result, how different is the soundscape from one album to the next? The two consecutive albums that you folks think sound vastly different enough to say, oh my gosh, that's a huge shift. Which, by the way, episode 85, right?
Yeah.
Not counting all the news desks. Yeah, not counting all the news desks, but just our regular. Episode 85, when we finally woven the word shift into the name of an episode, which is part of the name of our show, Yesshift. I just thought it took us a while, but here we are.
Yeah, so really coming full circle tour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For all good people.
Yeah. So my initial answer, which I guess I'm, for the most part, might stick with, and it is kind of a cheat because of the way this went down.
That's totally you.
Yeah. No. But I'm thinking from Big Generator to Union, and I guess from a certain point of view, one could even say from ABWH to Union, it's a huge shift. So it's kind of different shifts from two different directions into one
I never
thing.
thought of ABWH because...
Right, because it wasn't made with the intent of being a Yes album. It just retroactively became part of the discography.
Yeah. Do we include that? Because if so, that changes my world completely.
I mean, we don't have to if it makes sense.
I will say this, whether or not we do, I will say this. Like some Yes albums, the ABWH album stands out on its own production-wise, completely different from any other Yes album, I think.
Yeah, there's no... Well, I feel like the latter has like some similar cultural influences, but yeah, production wise ABWH pretty much stands on its own. Yeah,
that's interesting. I didn't even consider that. So
yeah,
okay, so
because with Big Generator they did record in multiple places, but in Union they just multiply that by like 100 or something.
Yeah, plus brought in other people and not that Yes did, but yeah, that ended up being like a well, anyways, I'll give mine.
Yeah.
Mine might change, and I'll get to my possible change after we read all the comments.
Yeah, because I might have a possible change thanks to some of these comments.
Yeah.
But yeah, go ahead.
And I wonder if it's the same, because one of them literally made me slap my head and go, wow. So mine have, since 1978 when Tormato came out, I could not believe how boxy it sounds compared to Going for the One. Going for the One, given the time it was recorded and released in 1976, 77, when they started recording it, it has a great open, almost live sort of sound, considering that's when it was recorded. And then we get Tormato, which has more shorter songs, and that's not part of the answer, but
the same lineup, so you kind of expect a similar result,
right? But the format of the material was different, and the recording, bless his heart, Alan, and the recording process, his drums just sound like shoeboxes, and the whole thing sounds like it was recorded in a shoebox. It's such a narrow EQ field, as opposed to the wideness and openness of the album before it, Going for the One. So that was mine. Mine, I think, is going to change, believe it or not, to one of two things that I read. And folks, I haven't even read all the comments. We have 6 pages of comments. So strap yourself in, put a helmet on, and go on this ride with us. And Steve, should we just get to it and take turns? What we're going to do is read the comments we have so far. We'll check the live comments. and on both Drum Talk TV, where we're simulcasting, and here on the Yesshift page. And then we'll each give our take on each one, other than duplicates. We'll still read those, but we won't give our take because we've given it. Maybe we will once in a while in case people are popping in and out. You know how it works.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, you go first.
Okay, so looking at the comments we have, so a friend of ours, Tony Jefferson.
Oh yeah, Tony.
He says, close to the edge to Tales from Topographic Oceans, different drummer and different studio, and also differences in production quality.
That's very legit.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting because musically, Tales feels like the next step to me. But if you think about the way Close to the Edge was made, like, you know, they were stitching the stuff together. Like, it felt like it was so complicated the way they did that. And with Tales, they, I think, brought hay and some, like, cutouts.
I was just going to say.
Yeah, Rick's keyboard's got infested with lice. So, yeah, I could see that a bit.
And folks, when I look this way, I'm on a big wide screen, and that's where my notes are. So I'm not staring into Steve's ear, even though I can see the wall on the other side through his other ear. That's really weird. Okay,
Yeah,
next we have Kevin
Space
Ward. Kevin, thank you so much. I would also vote for going for the one to Tormato, just like mine. His reasoning is going for the one is, spacious. Tormato is kind of in your face. I enjoy both albums. I would have always considered, yes, huge, spacious, otherworldly prior to Tormato. Yeah, that's huge. In a way, maybe Tormato somewhat goes back to the very first or second album with just the format of the music in a way, even though they sound nothing alike. But that's legit, and that was my first picks. Yeah. Go ahead with the next one.
Yeah, so the next one, Anthony Abdoea, well, those should be right, I think, says magnification to Fly From Here. And that one did come to mind because, you know, it's very fair. You have the 10-year gap, so a lot has changed in time. But, like, to me personally, the
time
soundscape...
is time.
Yeah, time is time. Like, it definitely sounds different, you know, Trevor Horn doing his stamp on Fly From Here. But, well, it doesn't feel too different to me,
agree. To me, it doesn't feel too different because they're both big sounds. Just, you know, you got the orchestra and all that on Magnification, and you got a nice fat sound for the most part, I think, on Fly From Here. I think that is very valid, and I could be wrong. Maybe this is what Anthony meant, that it's one of the biggest differences in the music. But sonically, I don't think they're that far apart because they both sound so big. But it's all subjective, you know.
Right, yeah. There's not one, like, objective answer. So it's, like, it's really fun seeing people's different points of views here.
Yeah, and Fernando Perdomo.
Oh, yeah, he's a guitarist. He actually played with Yes members at the Alan White tribute, and he performed with Dave Kurzer on the Yesterday and Today tribute album they put together a few years ago.
Fernando, thanks for chiming in. Drama to 90125. Now, I had to think about that for a moment, and I do agree, but I think that's in all of these. What do you think? I think that's almost a buried bone because they both have a modern sound from what the 2 or 3 albums that came before them, or at least the 2. And I kind of like that matchup didn't even occur to me. So I think that Drama's big, fat, and heavy sounding, whereas 90125 is like, we're in the future. You know, 1980 versus into the 80s and all new production gear, and you can kind of hear that. So I get that, you know.
Yeah, and this is what I meant when I said our question of what was the biggest shift kind of stemmed from my original question that I thought of, which was what was a bigger shift, and yes, like going from Tormato to Drama or from Drama to 90125. Right. So this one definitely occurred to me. And I see that Mark Burns agreed with Fernando's answer.
And we're talking about consecutive albums, folks. That's an important part of the this puzzle. They have to be like you can't say the Yes album and Relayer.
Yeah,
We're talking about consecutively with the biggest change.
Yeah, and it's interesting to think about this one because 90125, kind of like Union or most of Union, started out as a different band. It was Cinema, and then they brought John back, and they made it into Yes. So it's kind of almost a cheat as well. But you have the consistency with Trevor Horn, but it does feel
totally different roles, though.
Yeah, and it's poppier. Like, I think Machine Messiah has that future feel a bit as well, but it's kind of
and
a different type
Fugit.
of future. Yeah, like it's kind of a different type of future feel between these two albums. It's kind of hard to really express verbally, but I think people get what I'm saying.
Yeah. Joe Luca.
Yeah, from Awaken.
Yeah, Joe Luca says, I would have to say Fly From Here to Heaven and Earth. Dramatically difference in production quality going down, in his opinion, from Fly From Here and then down to Heaven and Earth. Going up, probably Tormato up to Drama. I absolutely agree. And that's one of the things I did not think of. My brain was so stuck on 40 whatever years of complaining about going for the one to Tormato that didn't even occur to me. And that might be my answer shift. We'll see when we get to the end of this, because there's a couple other forehead slappers. But did that one ever occur to you? Like, that's huge. It might be even a bigger difference from going for the one to Tormato, when you go to Tormato to this giant big sound of drama, or drama, as Trevor Horn would say.
Yeah, so this didn't really occur to me. Like, there's definitely a difference in how the two albums were made, and people can hear it. What's interesting about Joe's answer is, like, his preferences here seem to be the Trevor Horn, like the drama or almost drama lineup ones, like Fly From Here and Drama over Tormato and Heaven and Earth. And yeah, you also got like Roy Thomas Baker on different sides of those eras. He was with the Paris Sessions and the layer with Heaven and Earth. So yeah, it's definitely a valid answer. It's an interesting one to think about.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
And then Tony Warren says Tormato and either side of that. So I guess
back to that, yeah.
Yeah, so I guess what Tony means is either going for the one to Tormato or Tormato to Drama. Like,
no, I think he means, let me reread it. Yes, you're right. I'm sorry. Yes, with Drama sandwiched in the middle there. Yeah, absolutely. Totally valid. And again, that's what really made me go, oh, duh, Tormato to Drama. Like, I was always, like I say, I don't want to sound like a broken record, so I won't. No pun intended. So Austin Owen, thanks, David, by the way. Austin Owen says, time and a word to the Yes album, the first Yes album with Eddie offered, and like those early ones. So for me personally, those early ones didn't even occur to me, because to me, even though Peter Banks is only on the first album,
and the
second one, I somehow group those first three albums together, even though Steve Howe is on the third one. Somehow that's almost like one era to me, because there's such a leap from the third album to Fragile. And I have to say, the fly in the ointment for me is Roger Dean. Like, that just totally changed the whole branding, and now that music's represented visually. And so somehow those first three albums are in one compartment for me, and I never even thought to give those considerations. So I like that one. That's good. What do you think of that?
Yeah, that is definitely, like, once people started saying that one, I was like, oh yeah, like, of course people saw this as like a huge leap in the Yes sound. But yeah, I, like I've said on the show, I kind of see those first three albums as like Tony K trilogy type of thing, if that makes sense.
By the way, since I have it, go ahead. You want to finish with that, and then I got something to mention.
Yeah, I was just going to add that Eddie Offord was an engineer on Time and a Word, but then the Yes album was when he got more involved with the production.
As a producer, yeah. It reminded me, talking about those first three albums, folks, Bill Bruford's book, I think so far what has shocked me the most in this about his whole history with Yes is how little to nothing they were making even after like the third album came out. Like that really blew me away. They were making almost nothing.
Yeah, it's bizarre.
Yeah, because we think of them as well. Anyways, go ahead. Next.
Yeah, and David almost said going for the one to Tornado. So again, another one we've mentioned. So yeah, you want to read that one from Paul Stefani?
Yes. The ladder to magnification. I don't know. To me, again, they're both big, wide sounds. I agree that the music is completely different, but I don't hear a giant leap from one production style to the other. Now, maybe if I put those both on right now, like played a song from each one in a row, I might think, oh, okay, I just haven't listened to this that way or something. But what are your thoughts on that? Musically, I agree 1,000%.
Yeah, sorry, I was just reading Tony Warren also added drama in either side of that. So there's another side to that, I guess, from him. But yeah, the ladder to magnification, because, you take out the keyboardist and, Billy Sherwood as well and bring in an orchestra, but it still feels like there's definitely a difference, but to me, it's not as huge of a difference as some of these other shifts we've seen. But yeah, each of those albums definitely have like their own identity. So I can kind of see where one could come at that in that perspective.
And I have to say, The Ladder is one of my favorite produced albums by Yes. I just think the sound is magnificent. The late great Bruce Fairbairn did such a great job. It sounds great. It really does.
Yeah, it does.
Which gave me an idea for an episode. So I just got to throw it out here, and we'll revisit it later, and people can start stewing on it. A lineup that was not a lineup that recorded the original version that performed it even better or to someone's more liking live. So I'll give an example since we're thinking about The Ladder. I think that the version of Perpetual Change on the Ladder tour is my favorite version. I just love that.
Yeah, and that version is amazing, and yours is no disgrace.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. Yeah, they're really, really good. The band is just on fire. Nothing against the original lineup that recorded it, but it just sounds great. It's rocking. So, okay, we'll revisit that episode another time.
Yeah. All right, so Seth Merges says, relayer to going for the one. The change in keyboardists is unmistakable, and the sounds of both albums are so vastly different. And yeah, I think at that point, that was the biggest gap between Yes studio albums. All the ones before then were like back to back, sometimes even a couple per year, which is insane to think about. But yeah, there's definitely a noticeable difference between relayer and going for the one, and the sound and the formatting. So yeah, I get that.
That's another one that I saw that and went, oh yeah. Relayer, I cannot think of a song on relayer without automatically picturing the album cover and the color palette and just how different that is from
and the branding.
The whole package. And while yes, the music is completely different, and Patrick sounds versus Rick sounds, the production is also that much different. So it's not just the change of the keyboard player, which is of course, and the going off into fusion and all that with relayer. That's all valid, but even just the production alone, I think that, my opinion, going for the one kind of got closed back in a little bit. Whereas relayer is just out there, way out there, just an arena kind of sound.
Yeah. And then we have Eric Grondin, who says drama and 90125. So we got another mention of that.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Eduardo Fiol Mexica. I hope I got that right. Close to the Edge to Tales from Topographic Oceans is like Tony Jefferson said it's not only the drumming that's huge in itself. Agreed. I agree with both you guys on that.
Yeah, and Max Hunt from Yes tribute band Fragile, and who's recorded with Clive Bailey as a firm. Well, we've had both of them on our show before. Says, without a doubt, drama to 90125, in my opinion.
Another vote for that. Yeah. Tim Newman. By the way, thanks, Max. Thanks, everybody, for chiming in. And we'll look at the live comments as we go as well. And Steve, you can weave those in. Tim Newman says, I think the obvious answer is drama again to 90125, but the change from tape to pure digital is an industry-wide tectonic shift. That's kind of what I was trying to explain earlier. You're absolutely right. A lot of these times, it's not just the producer, and often it's the same producer through some of these shifts, not just their audio vision, if you will, but the equipment and the technology that they had to work with. And that is when things just totally changed.
Yeah. And then Joey Wise says relayer to going for the one, or Tormado to drama. They do a lot of drastic production. So for some of these answers, people put in like a couple different answers, which is fine. Like, it's cool to see.
Yeah, those are huge. Martin Proctor says, I would say going for the one to Tormado because of Eddie leaving.
Yeah. And then Paul Ehrlich says talk to keys to ascension.
That's another one I didn't even think of.
Yeah, and I wasn't sure if we'd count this because of the live stuff, but I mean, it does have studio stuff. But like, this is the thing where I was wondering if I should change my answer, because with talk, there is stuff on Union that feels like, the Rabin stuff feels like it's the seeds of talk, and then you do all the recording to hard drive, and it just sounds so digital and inside of a computer. And then you get to the keys studio material, I guess you could call it, and it feels so different from talk. It feels like almost a different band. You know?
Absolutely. And what happened, and just like Tim is saying, that tectonic change, that shift in the industry going to digital, and then they took it a step farther. And if I remember right, I believe Talk is the very first full album that was recorded direct to disc. And then what started to happen is people wanted stuff to sound like it was on tape again. And that to me is the difference that you hear on the Keys studio stuff. It's fatter, it's warmer, it sounds like an analog recording. And the latter is the same way, So there's that weird arc where we went back to bell bottoms and tie dye, if you will.
Yeah, for sure.
Then we've got
Rob Lee Latham.
Thank you. Yeah. Hey, Rob Lee Latham. How's it going? Tormado to drama and talk to keys. There you go. Some of these are obvious to a lot of people because we're seeing a lot of repeat things. And some of these, it makes so much sense for me to look at them now and hear it in my head. Like, didn't even occur to me, some of these. And they're such great examples.
Yeah, and then we have Trevor Jones. I briefly wondered if this was the same Trevor Jones who did the music for The Dark Crystal. I don't think it is, but in any case, Trevor says drama to 90125. Hey, those albums have Trevors on them. And that was me adding that part. And then he continues, only 2 out of 5 personnel the same and a radically different sound. Yeah. So all this drama talk.
Oh, I get it. 2 different ones, not 2 remaining ones. Yeah.
But all this drama talk is reminding me of something. So, and I have it opened up on one of my windows here. Recently, John D posted that there is some rehearsal footage from the drama era of that lineup rehearsing And You and I. So he posted a little snippet of it, and I'll link it later, but here, I'm just looking at the description right now. So John D says, here's a very short video of the drama Yes rehearsing And You and I in 1980. The good news is that the video masters of this footage are available for licensing. The bad news is that I can only post this tiny bit of footage. I have let Yes management know about the video master tapes of this 1980 rehearsal. There are also properly filmed interviews with the drama band members.
Wow.
here's hoping that Yes Management or someone else licenses this extensive footage and gets it out there.
You know what? In Yes Years, there is that shot when Steve Howe is talking about that album and how he said, I got particularly close to Trevor Horn, and you see them in the studio sitting behind I wonder if that's part of some of that interview footage and stuff, B-roll.
Yeah, I was, because looking at the footage, I was wondering that too, because I vaguely remember there's some of that where it's not part of the music videos they show. It's like something else. So yeah, I would love to see all this footage released. Like lots of us fans would love to see this, I'm sure.
Well, at least we know that's one thing that wasn't lost in one of John's closets. I don't think.
Right, because John Anderson wasn't there.
Right, exactly. Let's see. We've got next is
Mark Colvard.
Oh, thank you. I lost my place. Mark Colvard says maybe is Tales from Topographic Oceans to Relayer. Agreed. That's a great take. Going from I love this cozy, familiar London studio to Chris's home studio with more weed and with new keyboardists and the desire to take the music in a different direction. The sound certainly changed. That's another great example, actually, Mark, of not only the difference, the big shift in the production sonically, but the music just being completely different. It's as much as a shift as Close to the Edge to Tales and Tales to Relayer, because Tales is, even in the ancient, as odd as that piece is, as a whole, the album's very warm and cozy. It's such a great word that you used, Mark. It's warm and cozy. I'd even say fuzzy. And there's just something very earthly about it, sandwiched between two albums that are everything but earthly, and I dig that. It must have been the farm animals and the hay in the studio.
Yeah, and then Annabelle Servin says Fragile to Close to the Edge. That's an interesting one because it's the same lineup, but again, the format is different. It's not, they have solos on Fragile and then Close to the Edge is like 3 songs. And I don't know if it sounds too different to me. What do you think of that take, Dad?
I agree with you, and I think that one of the reasons why I think the X factor in that is Bill Bruford. His drumming style is so recognizable that I think it stitched those 2 albums together, which sort of impeded that much of a shift. But there's, we've talked about this over and over. There is no album that sounds anything like the production style, forget the music for a moment, as Close to the Edge, other than maybe Fragile. So that's why I don't think it's that much. But I totally respect that take, absolutely. Because we're all hearing this with different ears,
Yeah, and actually one of my friends from college recently got around to...
You went to college?
Yeah. He got around to listening to Fragile, and he really enjoyed how
Steve Howe? Sorry.
Yeah, probably, but how he couldn't always expect what the next song would be like. And
that's a great take.
I feel like that's something we kind of take for granted with Fragile because we're so used to it. But yeah, if you think about it, it's like the different solos from different members, and then even each of the full band songs sound very different from each other. It's a really surprising album.
Yeah, if you look at just 3, Long Distance, Run Around, Roundabout, and Heart of the Sunrise. Heart of the Sunrise is just so blah in the beginning. It's just like, it's almost like, how old was I when I heard that? I was like 9, 8. And it scared me when that came on. Doesn't scare me as much. That's a good take. Chris Gibson, Tormato to Drama again.
Yeah, and then Mark Bierkins says Drama to 90125. So again, another recurring one.
Yeah, here's another. Alan Bialowis says Time and a Word to the Yes album.
Yeah, and then Jeffrey Conrad responded to Alan saying, wasn't even considering this, but now that you mentioned it, you may be right. the Yes album was a huge step forward, and production was a huge part of that.
Yeah, very good take. Now, you're next, right?
Okay, John English, not to be confused with Johnny English, played by Rowan Atkinson, says, I think there were quite noticeable shifts between any of the albums they did between Yes and Drama, with the exception of Close to the Edge and Tales from Topographic Oceans.
Now that's interesting. He doesn't notice that much of a shift in those two.
Yeah.
Cool.
Interesting.
And I wonder if, John, if you're referring more musically than the soundscape.
Yeah, it's possible.
But either way, but yeah, so then we've got Colvin Engeler Houston says, this is where I get my head cut off. I haven't seen this one. This is where I get my head cut off, but I feel a huge change in heaven and earth to the quest. Reason for that is, as I understand it, the latter, not the ladder, but the latter, as in the quest, was recorded under lockdown conditions, true, and the band recorded separately or in twos on opposite sides of the Atlantic, sort of like Union. Now, that's an interesting take, and I have to say I haven't heard Heaven and Earth enough to make that comparison in my head, so I'll have to take your word for it. Well, not take your word for it, that's your take, but I mean, you like Steve, you're more familiar with Heaven and Earth than I am. To me, it was too ballady.
Right. I think production-wise, there is a bit of a shift, but not a huge one, even though it's been there's 7 years between the albums. When I listen to The Quest, I don't really hear that they're in separate locations. I just imagine they're all in the same place, even though I know for a fact that that's not true, you know?
Mm-hmm. I think that's because they did such a good job with it.
Yeah.
Cool.
And then Lee Crawford says, once again, time and a word to the Yes album.
Yeah. Vinny Spadaro says, I'd vote Relayer to Going for the One. Now, this is the second one that was like a forehead slapper for me, just like Tormato to Drama. And now you've got Relayer to Going for the One. That's a total yes, and a yes vote, and totally obvious when you really think of that. Everything leading up to Relayer was building upon similar foundation, including the first two albums. So musically, definitely, and probably production-wise. He says, that's me. He says, this feels like the most logical drop-off spot, if you will. I like the way you put that, Vinny. I would say 90125, because that wasn't supposed to be yes. And into the 90s was flipping back and forth between the two prominent lineups. So that's not a fair era to base it on either. I think it could be, if we are talking just about the sonic soundscape and not the music as much. But I totally get what you're saying, and all good takes.
Yeah. Evie Austin says Tormato to Drama. I admittedly enjoy Tormato quite a bit, but getting to that clear, beautiful, heavy sound of Drama is always amazing to me.
Interesting. I like that. That's another great way to put those two albums mentioned. And then Christopher Cartwright says, from... Sorry, as soon as I read his last name, that scene in Seinfeld just ran through my head when the guy at the Chinese restaurant calls Cartwright instead of Costanza.
Yeah.
So, I don't know what took me there. And then Seinfeld says, but you're not Cartwright. I know I'm not Cartwright.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that, Christopher. Christopher Cartwright says, from Relayer, again, to Going for the One, a very obvious one I didn't even think of. Did you even consider that? Did you consider those when you...
I kind of did, but not for very long.
It's so obvious to me now that I'm seeing this over and over. Eddie offered to band produced. So Eddie offered in Relayer to the band producing Going for the One. Howe and Mraz to Howe versus Wakeman. There's a reason Steve Wilson remixes our Yes album. Let me read that again. There's a reason Steve Wilson remixes our Yes album to Relayer. Oh, I get it. That chunk of the catalog. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And then we got Bruce Campbell. I don't think this is the actor, although that would have been cool.
You know, I've never heard a Steve Wilson remix of anything.
I've heard like some here and there, but I'm not super familiar with
Me,
them.
me neither. I don't. I'm in the dark on that one and seem ignorant, but I'm more naive. Go ahead with Bruce.
Right. So Bruce, thanks for chiming in, says time and a word to the Yes album. Not only production, but the swap from Banks to Howe produced the classic Yes sound and compositions we love.
They're okay. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, again, this is something that a lot of fans seem to agree on, that there's definitely a difference between the early Yes sound, like on the first two albums, and the Yes album, even though you and I kind of lump those first three together, you know?
Yeah. And then we've got Alejandro Cosentino says, that's easy. Going for the one in Tormato. Sorry, both are radically different sound-wise and a very short period of time between them. Absolutely.
Yeah, and then Bill McCarskey says Tormato to drama. So we got another repeat of
Definitely.
that.
And Neil Stevenson, drama to 90125 again.
Yeah, and then Paul Elridge says from Talk to Keys to Ascension, or it would be if Wakeman had used more classic or better emulations of classic keyboard tones like he did earlier and later.
I think even without that, I agree with you, Paul, that Talk to Keys to Ascension are very different. And I think the biggest way I could explain it is, like I mentioned before, going from that digital recording to hard disk to no, let's drop back down here in that warmer analog sound. That to me is how they sound so different. And the Key Studio stuff also has that nice big live sound, the room sound, if you will.
Yeah.
Cool. Dan Plunkett says, significant differences between the studio tracks on Keys and Open Your Eyes. Yeah, I didn't even think of that. Yeah.
That did kind of come to mind, but weirdly, I think, you know, it still has the Steve Howe guitar sound in places. So,
you know what though? Go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
So yeah, I don't know. Like, it's definitely a big shift, but not as big as like some of the other ones that I was thinking about.
I think Open Your Eyes to the Ladder is a huge leap.
Oh, it
thanks to
definitely
Bruce
is.
Fairbairn. Yeah. Same lineup, but totally different sound of those two albums. I happen to love the sound of Open Your Eyes, but that's huge.
Yeah. And then Paul McCoy says they had a lot of turning points, but the key point was from Time and a Word to the Yes album. When Steve joined, that was when they really raised the bar and became an innovative progressive rock band. So yeah, we got another mention of that first like major transition in the band.
Yep. And Jerry Orama, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, Jerry. Jerry says from Drama to 90125 would be easy pick, but also Magnification to Fly from here should be mentioned in this context. Those two are again, yeah.
Yeah, again, it's got that 10-year gap between those latter two. Mm-hmm. John Clarity says from a bass player's perspective, from Close to the Edge to Tails was a radical shift from Squire's Rick in your face sound to a somewhat softer, gentler tone, even though Tails completely blew me away.
That's a great take. I like that a lot. Hey, John Kuhn, super user, super fan. Tails to Relayer, simple as that. And I agree.
Yeah.
Like, that's one of the ones that didn't occur to me that when I saw it on the list, I'm like, oh, duh.
Yeah, and Nick Copeland says Tormato, which is muddy and tinny in equal parts, to Drama, Trevor Horn at his best, muscular, bold, bright, and crisp. Yeah, Trevor Horn like did a lot of work from that. He's been posting some nice throwback pics recently, so people should check those out on his page.
Absolutely. And then Peter Greenwood, we know who Peter is.
Yeah, from Say Yes.
Yep, another awesome Yes tribute band. He says the Yes album to Fragile, technically. More tracks and instrument separation with the resulting increased clarity. I remember an interview at the time where one of the band, How I think, remarked how they were using booths for instrumental recording rather than always being in an open room together in order to keep the overspill down. This makes a lot of sense when planning overdubs, drop-ins, and retakes, as overspill will be very low in the mix. Offered was at the helm. He did a great job when one compares Fragile production to other notable albums of late 1971. So yeah, yes to Fragile, huge leap. And yeah, I can, just reading that when you talk about that more isolated sound, I can hear that in the production that it's cleaner, and they had this in gear to record with then. We're not talking about 10, 15 years changes in technology. So doing that did do something. Absolutely. That's a great take.
Yeah, and before I go to this next one, just reading a live comment from Jeffrey Mason, friend of the show, who says 1978 to 1980. So I'm guessing he means Tormato to Drama once again.
Yeah.
It's quite a popular one.
Yeah.
So this next one from JC Bray, however it's pronounced, says when Trevor Rabin joined and 90125 came out. So I guess that'll be from Drama to 90125, and yeah, there's definitely a difference there.
Yeah, CJ Irwin says magnification to Fly From Here again. Magnification sounded way more organic, real, and unprocessed. Fly From Here was way too digital. While there's a lot of subjectivity there, I totally get it and don't disagree. That magnification was more of that, like throw them in a room or on a stage and just record it without an audience, versus something that with Trevor Horn having a lot more processing in it and, things like that. And the re-edition of Jeff Downs and his keyboard sounds having that, bringing back that era sound, if you will, from the 80s to a degree.
Yeah, and I do kind of wonder if part of this is maybe partially due to like the branding, but some of the songs on Magnification, I do imagine like taking place outside, whereas with Fly From Here, some of that material I imagine inside, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I wonder if like maybe the space cover for Magnification kind of contributes to that in my head, but who knows?
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So Daniel Carter Gibson says, "Time and a Word, a little muddy though still cherished, to the Yes album, which was more crisp and clear and had some hotshot new guitarist."
Yeah. Hopefully he'll work out.
Yeah. Yeah, just the addition of Steve Howe, which reminds me, I actually saw that Steve Howe made a post about Jeff Beck, who passed away.
Oh, I didn't see that one. Can you pull it up before we're done?
Yeah, so he says Jeff Beck was the most formidable guitarist. His original, uncompromised power shook the buildings he played in with his dazzling and otherwise sublime playing, twisting every last drop out of each note. He told me once that he played even better at home. My condolences to his family and loved ones.
That's Howe. Awesome to hear from a virtuoso like Steve Howe.
Yeah, I mean, whenever the world of rock loses a musician, like it's tough. So yeah, it's always huge.
Yeah. Something else that this comment made me think of. Oh, going again from Eddie being engineer to producer seat had something to do with it as well.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, cool. Nathan Tyler Lowry says, Tormato to Drama, open your eyes to the latter. I mentioned that earlier. Magnification from anything, union to talk. He's got a few takes here. Keys to Ascension to open your eyes, true. Going for the one to Tormato, never considered that. Just kidding. Frankly, musically, Sound Chaser from Relayer was the most radical move. Musically, absolutely. We're talking sonically here. I think maybe we didn't make that totally clear when we posed this, but very great takes. I think all accurate as far as how I feel about them.
Yeah, and then Randy Robinson says, Time and a Word to the Yes album or Drama to 90125. Yeah, interesting, like very different eras there.
Yeah. Randy Robinson, I'm just kidding. Joel, yeah. Joe Y, or if it's Spanish, Joel E. Perard. Maybe there's two of them. I would actually say the Yes album to Fragile. Yeah. Another one.
Yeah. And then Chad Pollock says keys to ascension to open your eyes. So yeah, like we
Another
said, that's a
vote for
huge
that.
one. Yeah, and then Joe Cast replied, Joe Cast, drummer for Total Macertain. He says, I was also thinking talk to Keys to Ascension, production wise, especially.
Yeah.
And yeah, Joe was actually on the latest episode of Yes Music podcast. He got interviewed there talking about Total Macertain. It was a
Yeah.
really neat episode. And one of their shows, upcoming shows, had to get canceled for like health reasons at the venue, I guess. But their Philadelphia show is still happening on the 22nd.
Yeah. Andy Keel simply says, yes, West on talk was the biggest shift. So that's valid, I'd say, to any album on either side of it, being that we're comparing two consecutive Yes albums. What are the biggest shifts? So I understand where he's coming from.
Okay. Yeah, and John M. Matheny says, from Going for the One to Tormado, the former is pretty much perfect production-wise. The latter is very harsh sounding to me.
Interesting. I'm glad to see that appear so many times because now I'm not thinking like, okay, I wasn't too harsh or crazy thinking
you feel vindicated.
vindicated over the 45 years? 45 years of thinking that since Tormado came out. And it was so good live. The stuff they played, it was so good live.
Yeah.
Future Times and Rejoice from that tour are one of my favorite live Yes performances. They're just so good, especially at the Cleveland, Ohio show.
Yeah, and hey, Kevin Mulrine's Tormado book coming up soon. Tormado.com.
Oh, that's right.
Tormadobook.com, rather.
Cool. Tom Verastro says, no album sounds like 90125 before or since. So I would say drama to 90125. Many, many differences in personnel, instrumentation, and stylistically between drama and 90125, although I love both. That's cool. I love that you recognize they're so different and love both. That's awesome. Yes, the Fairlight, that's a keyboard for those who don't know, but also Yamaha's DX, another keyboard, i.e. FM rather than analog. Synths, also Squire's bass tone was intentionally steering away from his trademark Rickenbach sound on most tracks. Very true. That I never really thought about that when we think soundscape of production, but the fact that the instrument sounds also were so different, which contributes to this. Yeah.
Yeah, and I see a live comment from Douglas Reed who says, I agree with your take on Tormado as a condensed sound. With all the soloing parts between Howe and Wakeman, it sounds like a gunfight scene from John Wick.
We just saw that recently, all the John Wick movies on New Year's Day. My wife and I had a pajama movie binge with the dogs and the cat.
Yeah, those are fun movies, yeah.
There, as soon as he mentioned that, I'm like picturing the scene with Halle Berry and John Wick and the two dogs in that scene where they're just, I loved that. That was awesome.
Yeah, it's heavy stuff, obviously, but just the way they choreograph everything.
Yeah, it's amazing. And those dogs were just brilliant. Whoever the handler and trainers were, just amazing stuff. Is it my turn or your turn? I think it's my turn.
I think it's, go ahead and read John Barry's.
Oh, okay. Interesting question. I'd have to say Tormado to drama myself. Tormado always felt weak to my ears.
Okay, and then we have...
I want to say something about that.
Yeah.
While I've said over and over and over how squashed and cardboard sound Alan's drums sounded and how much it sounded like that was recorded or mixed in a cardboard box, that's something I would love to remix myself and open that fucker up. Because I love the music that's on it. And like I said, on the tour, what they did perform from that, when you look at Silent Wings of Freedom, Future Times, Rejoice, even Circus of Heaven even, is such a big sound. Like, it's so far from the album. Hello, why didn't you just think backwards and do it the way you would have performed it? I think that's so curious. I would love to remix that or have anybody of worth remix it and have that as a reissue. Oh, on colored vinyl with the Yes Tour map on it.
Ooh. Yeah, and maybe
commemorative.
Yeah, maybe even title it Yes Tour this time and remove the tomato.
Tomato,
Maybe.
yeah.
Yeah, make it more of a collector's thing.
I
Yeah.
love that. Let's
Yeah.
license it and just do it.
Pete Sherman says Tormato to Drama. Yeah, so that's another repeat. And then John Bean just says the Yes album. So I'm guessing John might mean From Time and a Word to the Yes album.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Lots
so
of stuff. Thanks for all the participation, everybody. Um, are there any other new takes? So it looks like Douglas's was the most recent. Yeah.
yeah, it looks like it.
How
But,
about on the Drum Talk TV page?
I see that Ingo Martis said, "Yo, guys," like a hello to us.
Hey, Ingo.
But no new takes. But like I alluded to, I tallied up how much each of these different shifts that were
Yeah,
mentioned.
I think I know the score. I think that. Well, I
Yeah.
bet it's close between Awaken. Going for the one to Tormato or Tormato to Drama are the biggest ones, and third place would be Drama to 90125. That's my guess. I wasn't counting. I'm just going by feel. How close am I?
Yeah, I think you're pretty close. So third place with 8 mentions by my count. And this was one that really surprised me, is From Time and a Word to the Yes album.
That does surprise me. Yeah.
Yeah. But you know, after hearing so many mentions of it on here, it's like, okay, I kind of see it.
Now I got to listen to those back to back, or at
Right.
least the last song of one and the first song of the other.
Yeah. I think going for the one to Tormato was 4th place with 6
Oh.
mentions on here.
Oh wow.
But yeah, going upward, 2nd place with 10 votes on here is Drama to 90125. And then 1st place with 12 mentions is Tormato to Drama.
Interesting.
And that's 12, not including yours, but yeah.
Yeah. That it doesn't surprise me. That's my shift. That's probably my number one vote now. Yeah. And little disclaimer I got to give everybody. Sometimes this happens. I go to 0 to 100 as far as I don't have to pee to. Oh my God, I got to pee now. And it's partly due to diabetes. So I'm only saying that to give me a little bit of leeway here. So Steve, carry on. I'll be right back.
Right. Yeah, so yeah, that was definitely a great. Yeah, so I'll just read off what the tallies for the rest of these are. So, Yes album to Fragile had 2 mentions. Fragile to Close to the Edge, just 1. Close to the Edge to Tails, 3 mentions. Tails to Relayer had 2. Relayer to Going for the One had 4. And then Union to Talk had 2 mentions. That might be including mine as well. I'm not 100% sure I remember. Talk to Keys to Ascension had 5 mentions, so I guess that puts that in 5th place, which makes sense, doesn't surprise me. Keys to Ascension to Open Your Eyes had 3 mentions. Open Your Eyes to the Ladder, 1 mention. The Ladder to Magnification, 1 again. Magnification to Fly From Here had 3. Fly From Here to Heaven and Earth had 1. And Heaven and Earth to the Quest had 1. What's interesting, I think, is that there's no mention of, and I guess it makes sense because it was an archival release, but I kind of wonder.
Start over. What did I miss?
I was just reading off the tallies for the rest of the different shows.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But yeah, so what I was about to say was it's interesting that there's no mention of from the very first Yes album to Time and a Word, I guess because people sort of group those together, but also no mention of From a Page, which I guess makes sense because it was an archival release. So it's like, do you go from Fly From Here to that, or Heaven and Earth to that, or like that to Fly From Here, or what?
You're right. Where's its place? And no one mentioned what you mentioned. No one mentioned ABWH.
Right.
You're the only one that thought of that, and it is very different. So what?
Yeah,
Excuse me.
and no one mentioned 90125 to Big Generator either, huh?
Oh wow, yeah. And so let me just think, because I knew that's when I started to get friendly with Alan when we lived near each other while ABWH was happening. So that next album was, I'm having such brain fog. So my question is, what albums is ABWH sandwiched between?
So it came out a couple years after Big Generator and a couple years before Union.
Wow, I think Big Generator to ABWH is as drastic as anything that's been mentioned here, production-wise. Forget the music for a moment, which still qualifies, but just production-wise from those two, Big Generator, to me, I like the music on it, but it, again, sounds just like Tormato has that narrow EQ field. Like, it sounds boxy. Like it could have way been opened up. That's another one I'd love to get my hands on to remix it or have someone again of worth. It's just like there's so much opportunity there that.
Yeah, I mean, there's no opportunity necessary. No experience needed.
There is in this case.
But yeah, it's funny how Big Generator's kind of the Tormato of the 80s, and Oliver Wakeman loves both of those albums.
Yeah.
Like, those are his two favorites.
Yeah, interesting. His dad's not on either one.
Well, not on Big Generator.
Oh,
but
what was the first one?
Tormato and Big Generator.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. So thanks, everybody. Our next show is a birthday show. Break it down, Steve.
Yeah, so this month, we've actually passed a couple birthdays already. Tony Kaye's birthday and Trevor Rabin's birthday. And John Davison's birthday will be on Monday, which is when we'll go live at noon Pacific US time, 3 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. UK time. So last year, the way we handled it was we sort of broke it into segments, kind of delving into each of their careers within one episode. But for this one, we thought it'd be a neat idea to imagine, okay, what if these three guys were in a lineup, and because, John Davison hasn't been in a Yes lineup with either Trevor Rabin or he has performed with Tony Kaye when he guested on the Yes 50 tour, but point is, the three of them as a unit haven't performed together, so
or created together as a unit.
Right, so the idea is, let's imagine that they're a lineup, Davison, Rabin, Kaye, or whatever you want to call it, and you can add other people as a bassist and drummer, and they can even be from outside of Yes. And so what songs would you want this lineup to perform, And it would be...
That's a freaking brain twister.
Yeah, like, do we set a limit on it, or like number of songs, or like how do we do this? We're sort of still figuring it out.
4 songs. You can mention 4 songs. So,
right, so Tales from Topographic Oceans. There we go.
There you go. So
no, that's not my actual answer.
Something that none of them played on. So it's Kaye, Rabin, and Davison, and it doesn't matter if you mention a song, they don't have to have performed on any of them, just like Steve said, Tales, but throw in what drummer and what bass player alive now, and they could even be out, well, they would be outside of Yes, other than Jay Shellen.
Right.
And Billy Sherwood. Yeah. I mean, that right there would be a cool lineup.
I mean, come to think of it, you could even get Lou Molino and Lee Pomeroy, who performed with ARW.
That's true. But I'd like to hear people's take of people who have not performed with them before. So
it's up to them.
Yeah, I've got some ideas. Just to prime everybody, I'm going to say Geddy Lee on bass and Gavin Harrison on drums.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have to think hard about mine. Yeah, this will be really interesting.
And the thing with Gavin is, if they were to play some really old material, he could Bruford it out for sure.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So, So we'll make a post or 5 that will clarify exactly what we want.
Yeah. So that'll be a lot of fun. And thanks again, everyone, for chiming in on this topic. And what a great way to start the year for Yesshift. You can email us at yesshiftpodcast@gmail.com. Send us suggestions, ideas, feedback if you'd like. You can find the audio episodes at anchor.fm/Yesshift.
There's a donate button.
Yeah, there's a support button. And you can also see what other podcast platforms we're on. Or if you prefer video, you can catch us live here on facebook.com/Yesshift. And I upload the videos onto YouTube afterward. I still have like a few archival episodes that still need to be up there, but I'm working on it.
And Steve is also working hard on finishing up the Roger Dean documentary that we shot.
Yeah, the Roger and Freya thing. It's still in the
Freya,
works.
I forgot to include her. I'm sorry.
Yeah. But yeah, I think people will really enjoy it. It hasn't been forgotten. It's still getting worked on, and yeah, it will be great to finally put out.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks everybody so much for following what we do. And questions, suggestions, donations, Steve gave you the rundown. We'd love to hear from you, and thank you so much. Over and out. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.